Welcome to our Brothers in Conversation podcast, powered by Jesse and Shaundell. Shaundell, you are from?
Bed-Stuy, do-or-die, Brooklyn. That little town.
That's a little town. That's nothing like Hawthorne, Nevada. Population 5,000 cats and dogs. Welcome to our Conversation podcast, powered by Jesse and
Shaundell.
That's who you are.
That's who I am.
Thursday, February 6th, 2020, episode 18.
Yep.
And we have a special guest with us. This is an unbelievable guy with so many attributes to his name. This is Germaine.
Hi guys, Shaundell. What's
That's
up?
my man.
Yep. Say hey to the folks out
Hi
there
everybody.
watching.
It's going to be intense. It's going to be enlightening. It's going to be refreshing. Just stay tuned.
And off the wall.
And off the wall.
Off the wall.
Yes. And so here we are with Vidal is author, mindset coach, and president of Engage Teens 360. Right?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that before we jump into our program.
So that's the business side of what I do, and literally under that umbrella is where I empower organizations. I go in and inspire cultural transformations because I believe that leadership is going through a shift and a lot of companies are actually suffering. So basically it's the core of my personal message, just branded and designed for organizations. Leadership.
Do you believe that leadership is going through a shift?
Totally.
I agree.
You know what I love about that?
I agree.
John Maxwell has a book called Leadership.
Oh,
Leader shift. That's a good one.
Leadership. You
I like
said
that.
leaders are going through a shift.
Yes.
I agree.
Yes.
This book by John Maxwell, Leadership,
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I got one too, but I would cuss. Leader. Oh, I wouldn't do that. I'm a Christian.
Yes, I actually think you would, but
Yeah.
but you mean well.
I'm not a custom
Now
Christian.
I hear someone else's sound. Can we turn down someone's sound?
I think it
where
might
there's-
I think it might be me.
Oh, okay. That way we
Yep.
we don't need to hear ourselves twice. do we?
Right.
No, we do not.
Nope.
So, very good. So I love the fact that you're doing that. I love
Yeah.
what you said about that, and I totally agree. And we're going to go back and forth between that
Oh,
and
yeah.
our topic. But our topic today is psychological effects of growing up without a father.
Yeah.
Psychological effects of growing up without a father.
Which has an impact on leadership.
Tons of impact.
Tons of impact
Total.
on
There's
leadership.
a total connect.
Man.
Absolutely.
It has
Oh
an
my
impact
God.
on leadership. It has an impact on family.
Yes.
It has an impact on your current and your future.
Yeah.
It has an impact on how you do what you do.
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of times people don't even realize that there's that their baggage or their trouble, their challenge, the things that hold them down.
Yeah.
They might not ever connect that was the impetus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They may never even commit. If you don't know what you don't know, it's really hard to correct it.
Well, awareness is always the first
Thank
step
you.
in terms of transforming into a better version of yourself. But yes, if you aren't aware and you don't know what you don't know,
Yeah.
you need help.
100%. So we're going to deep dive on this. We're going to dig into this, and we're going to unpack some things. Before we do, let's talk about some special events in case, because all of us do a lot of connecting, facilitating, presenting, and
Sure.
so forth between the three of us.
Yeah.
Shaundell, for you, what do you have coming up that you want to share with this audience that they may want to attend or tune into?
You know, I don't have a whole lot coming up right away.
Okay.
I know that I'm doing a couple of things. One of the things that I'm working on is, I'm sitting in Neon. It featured me last year as one of the successful Black Americans in Las Vegas. I didn't either.
Black?
I told him that.
I didn't know you were black.
How did you not know that?
Did you know he was black?
Huh?
Well, I kind of
No, but the
did.
brother
I
don't
wasn't
sound
sure.
black.
Yeah.
No, he doesn't.
No, that's what I'm trying to tell you. I tried to explain to them. I don't know where. I'm
I'm going to tell you like
Brooklynese.
my mama used to tell me.
That's right.
Can't you sound more black than that?
That's right.
I'm like,
Yeah.
you got 5 other very black children.
And they can
give
help
them
you
a
out.
call and let them help you out.
That's right. They know how to talk. Jive.
Sorry.
Is that what it's called? Jive?
Yeah.
I'm a black European. Actually, no. I am actually the consumer African American because
Yeah.
I was actually born in Africa.
Right on.
And I am American.
Right on.
Whoa.
Yes.
Where in
Okay,
Africa?
yes.
I was born in what used to be called the Belgian Congo. Most of you might
Yes.
remember Zaire.
Yeah,
Okay.
Zaire.
Rumble in the jungle.
Yeah, Zaire. That's where I get it
That's
from.
that's my
That's
home
your home.
country.
Get out.
I am African American.
Man, I love
Give
you
me
all.
some skin, you African American.
Yes.
You're the first
Yes.
legit African American I've ever met.
Thank you very much.
Other people call themselves that, but you are it.
The real brother.
Right?
I am the real.
The real
Do they
brother.
call you original?
Original.
No, they just call me Vita.
Original Vital. I'm with you.
So this is really cool. So give us, I know, listen, folks, if you're listening, we'll get into our subject, but I want to hear just a tiny bit about, so you were born there. How long did you live there?
I will give you a very complex story, sort of
Okay.
a condensed version. ultimately, I am a multifaceted, multi-layered, culturally diverse person. I'm a Belgian national.
Oh my God.
British accent.
Right.
Born in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Gosh.
Who got to live the American dream by
Right.
way of a French-Canadian circus. So, where this ties into, in terms of culture, my father is Caucasian, blonde hair, blue eyes. My mother is African.
Get out.
I was born in the Congo at the midst of a civil war.
Yeah.
So imagine this. The blacks, the natives, are trying to kill my father because he's white. Wazungu, they would call
Wow.
him.
Yeah.
He's white. They're trying to kill him.
Yeah.
You've got the Belgian military who are trying to kill my mother because she's black.
Wow.
So
Born a
you've got
crime. Born a crime.
comedian
Trevor
Trevor
Noah.
Noah, born a crime.
You lived that life.
I lived that
Wow.
life. I was
Get
born in
out.
that. Yes.
Wow.
And guess what? We're related. Shake my hand.
Oh.
Because your father was blonde hair, blue eyes.
Yes.
My wife was blonde with green eyes. So we're related.
Yes,
Yeah.
we are. Yes, we are.
Right on.
But I think my mother-in-law, is my mother-in-law's her eyes blue? Brown. Okay, I was gonna lie and pull that in.
Yeah,
because she might be listening, and so I'll get it wrong.
Yeah.
But no, what you're talking about, you know what I say this saying all
This
the time,
dude is
Joe.
diversity all in itself.
No, he's way
I
diverse.
actually
mean-
am more and more trying to bring that message because I think
I'm with you.
corporate America does need it, and you know
Yeah.
what? I embody that mindset.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
But this is what it comes down to: is that
Never
because
knew.
I've experienced these different culturally diverse things, I can relate to Africans. I can
Yeah.
relate to Caucasians.
Yep.
I am both black and both white. The yin, the yang.
Can
you say that?
Can you relate to people from Brooklyn?
No.
'Cause that's a whole different world, man. I'm telling you.
Wait,
Blacks in Brooklyn,
No, but-
Jesus.
Bro, that's a culture.
That's a
thing.
whole
It's
different
nother
culture thing.
But get this.
But I'll take you to my hood. You'll learn.
Shaundell
Man,
and I
woo.
always say we're all living the same lives.
That's right. We are.
We are, and I
We
say,
really are.
I say that we are all one people.
Yeah.
You are a perfect representation.
Oh, absolutely.
We are all one people.
All one people.
So I like to view myself as people ask me, well, then what do you ultimately relate to? And I will be honest, I don't view myself as black. I don't view myself as white. I am a citizen of the world.
Yeah.
It's poetic, it's romantic, but that's the way I view life.
Yeah.
I don't fit into a specific box. I don't want to be labeled.
Yeah.
I'm a citizen of the world.
And you know why you and I get along so well, and I know Shaundell will weigh in on this, is because I don't consider myself a black person.
Yeah.
I consider myself a person,
Yeah.
and then I talk about my different distinctions.
Yeah.
Black is one of them.
Yes.
Man is one of them.
Yep.
Writer, author is one of them. Citizen is so forth and so on. There's a
Yeah.
melting pot of things, but I consider myself a person
Yes.
first.
Well, and I'll tell you where it comes from for me. My father actually clarified it for me many years ago. And he said, you know what? Actually, if Africa is the birthplace of man, then guess what? Everybody comes from us.
Yes.
We're all one people.
We're all one
Yes.
people. So people don't like to hear that. They're like, well, how do you define being black? And I said, well, you define it by saying if you're talking about Africa, you're talking about humanity.
Yes.
So that's who we're part of.
Right.
And that's why I believe sometimes we have greater gifts and greater talents that people can't explain. And they're saying, well, how did you get that? And how did you get that? Shaundell, did you go to Toastmasters for 10 years to do this and do that? Well, sometimes you grow up for us, I grew up in church and we're just talking. We're just
Yes.
singing. We're just
Expressive.
praising. We're
Yeah.
expressing. We're learning scripture.
Yes.
So things already come to us sort of naturally, right?
When you say that, you're talking about because of the diverse upbringing, you weren't just raised in one area. You were raised
Yeah.
in different pockets of those areas. Is
Yeah,
that what
and
you're
not
saying?
only that, but I also feel blessed that my mother was focused on cultural development. Even though she was a school teacher and we were in a predominantly black neighborhood, she said your greatest gift will be able to when you can communicate with the world.
That woman, his
That's
mother,
powerful.
oh my God, gave me chills.
Yeah.
His mother, I don't even think she knew how powerful that was. So especially to a young man
Yeah.
growing up in a predominantly black area in New York, that was huge because I believe that our ability to communicate is really where we blossom in life.
Absolutely.
I believe that even as speakers, you don't get up on the stage. I know you. I've watched you. I've seen you don't get up on stage to impress people. You don't get up on stage to impress people. You both are really down to earth people. I've heard you speak and I've heard you speak. I've listened to you, and your speaking style pulls people in. I've heard it said this way: speak to express, not to impress.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
There's an expression designed custom fit for that audience.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that also ties into what's the intention of why we get up and communicate. So there are some people who it's all about them.
That's a good
Listen
point.
to me, look at me, because
point.
I know what I want to talk about, and they are there for their own benefit.
Right.
Whereas I believe, from what I've seen of you and what I'm learning about you, especially if your background is sort of church, you are there to give to the community. So it depends the intention of the communication. Are you there for the benefit of the audience, or are you there to have your ego stroked?
Yes.
I check my ego at the door before I leave home.
Yeah.
It doesn't even get in the car.
Yeah.
It doesn't go with me because it's not about me.
Yeah.
And I struggled at my last speaking event, the mindset of success.
Tell me why you struggled.
Well, because there was something I didn't really want to share. And I talked to Dinesha, who was producing the
You
event.
didn't want to share on stage.
On stage.
Okay.
Because I wrote it.
Okay.
And she's like, well, why would you take this out if you wrote it? And really, because she said, well, who are you doing it for? Are you doing it for you? Or are you doing it for the audience?
Right.
So I had to go back and reinsert it. And it was sharing the molestation at 12 years old.
So that was the piece
That's
that
why I
you
was so
struggled.
emotional when I actually had to say it. And I practiced it
Now,
over and
bring
over.
that to the
big.
story a little bit. You talked about the molestation. Is this something that you personally experienced?
Yes.
Yes. And had never shared
And then I never shared
publicly.
Publicly.
Now, this is so I share some very dark personal shadows. And what I've learned is over the years, in the very beginning, it was cathartic for me. And then over time, people started saying, Vital, you need to share this with the world. Here's the thing. The amount of people who have been molested, they feel isolated. They feel like
Yes.
shame and guilt that
Good
they
point.
can't share. So your courage, your vulnerability now empowers them, because so you almost have there are two ways to address it, I believe. You have this horrible experience. You can keep it to yourself and you can fight and live with your demons, or you can be very vulnerable and share that and let people know, first of all, I'm not alone. There are people out there who have experienced it. So actually, you are being very thoughtful of the audience to share your demons, your darkest moments, to empower others.
That's what Dinesha said.
And you're
That's
spot
what
on.
Dinesha said.
Wow.
You're spot on, because here's the thing. At this point in your life, it's likely not plaguing you to the degree that sharing is going to be therapeutic for you.
No.
You likely have worked through it, all of that. Not saying it has had some effect on you, but you've risen well above it. So you clearly wouldn't be doing it from a personal perspective. although
Exactly.
it's a personal story.
Right.
But you know what? People loved, when people look at you, they would never guess that you went through that.
Right. No, that's exactly
You
what she
see
said.
what I'm saying?
Yeah. And what's interesting is that the way it was done is not the typical of what people think molestation is, right?
Right.
So you know how you always have this childhood hero, like the older guy who's cool with you and showing you the ropes around the neighborhood, but then he thought it was his job to help me deal with my virginity at 12 years old.
Right. Fair enough.
So that was
It was a
a
whole
different
different perspective.
Yeah, it wasn't somebody taking you in a room and
Abusing you,
it was
taking
him
advantage of you.
introducing me to his older cousin and kind of bringing it together. But at that time, based on my view and my understanding of what molestation was, I didn't think it was molestation. I thought, and then later on I figured out or learned that had an impact on me.
It's molestation, it's abuse,
Right.
It's horrific.
Yeah.
Right.
It's horrific.
Which brings us back to the psychological effects of growing up without a father. So thanks for sharing that again. So I'm gonna raise a couple points here that I've drawn, and let's spin off of the. Oh, we didn't finish. Sorry, we get sidetracked. Well, at least.
Well, yeah.
What you were going to do?
Events.
What you got?
Well, I don't really have many, but I do want to tout your event, because I think the Breakthrough Success Breakfast on Thursday, next Thursday on February 13th,
February 13th,
that you
8
and
a.m.
Lisa are doing at the Chamber. I think that is paramount to what we're talking about right now. Self-actualization, self-awareness, understanding who you are is the first start to all of these discoveries, if you will. So I think that's one of the most important events that I would love to promote.
No, that's cool. I appreciate that. And Lisa and I are gonna reveal the 3 secrets in that piece that's gonna really help people out in a great way. The Communication for Leadership Success workshop is what we're calling that for that breakthrough breakfast, and that's actually gonna be a bit of a teaser to give them something that they can actually use. Then that's going to set us up for a May 9th workshop, with the Communication for Leadership Success, and that's going to be a full day program. So the
And
first
please sign up on Eventbrite, right? Because you got limited space. So sign up on Eventbrite
for
for
the
that.
first one?
For the first one, yes.
and that one is free.
That one is free.
Okay.
Yeah, so that one is free. So make sure that
On February 13th.
February 13th at the Chamber,
that's upcoming.
Urban Chamber.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yes.
on May 9th will be a paid event because that's going to be a full day
Yeah.
workshop that they're going to walk away with. Our last one in October of
Amazing.
2019, it was really, really exciting.
Yeah.
People walked away with some great gifts. So
Mm-hmm.
those are things that we have on board coming. We have a few others, but that one is huge. We have SNC, which is Sierra Nevada Corporation in Reno. We get to do a great leadership and communication workshop for them.
Cool.
In Sparks, Nevada.
Yeah.
Flying into Reno to do that. What's going on in your world?
You talked about the subject of communication. I just happen to have completed my online training course for communication.
Nice.
So that is now literally, thank you, because you know it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Let me do the proper respect.
Thank you.
He completed
Thank
an
you.
online course. That's
That's
no
cool.
joke.
It's
Good
no
stuff,
joke.
He
man.
did it solo.
Yes.
Yeah.
He had a team of Lisa Olshafer, brilliant woman.
Yeah.
Lisa Ferrell, brilliant woman. Jesse Ferrell, I do okay. But we put over 2,100 hours last
Wow.
year between the three of us designing our online course called the Breakthrough Success Plan.
Right.
I'm going to tell you like this. It's no joke.
It is no
It's
joke.
not for the faint of heart. And you
It's
don't
a lot of
get to
hard
get-
work, man.
And you don't get to give up your day job
Nope.
while you're doing that.
Nope.
So tell us.
Thank you for bringing that to the forefront because it is a lot of work and you know the reward hopefully will be that it will bring a lot of value to people who chime in. So it is available. It's called The Art of Communication. So in a nutshell, we all know this, that communication is the foundation of either success or failure in life, whether it's professional
Agreed.
and specifically personal.
Agreed.
I think I recently read a quote that the biggest distance between two people is misunderstanding.
Yep. That's a fact.
That's huge. The
Right?
biggest
That's a
distance
fact, yeah.
between two
And
people's
so in this online course, I'm trying to break down some key elements. What are some basic fundamentals that you need to have effective communication, to be clearly understood,
Yep.
to really get your message across in a way that is not only people able to understand it, but they can receive it.
What makes your online course and this communication piece that you design unique and different from many others, if not all others?
Well, not to brag, but I have this absolutely charming British accent. Come on.
Hey,
Come on.
I'm trying to steal it.
Come on.
You kidding me? Arlene, watch out, baby.
Well, that you do have.
That you do have.
I think a part of the differentiator is because of my going back to the cultural diversity. So I bring elements that aren't necessarily fixed to women, African Americans, Europeans. I bring this multitude of perceptions that enrich people's ways of communication. It actually opens their view of how they can communicate.
Nice.
So there's that factor. I've also tried to design it in a way that it's not this boring death by PowerPoint. A lot of keynotes, a lot
Right.
of online trainings are
Right.
boring.
Right.
Yeah.
So there is sort of an engaging entertainment element to it
Nice.
without taking away from the essence of what I'm trying to share.
Right.
Yeah.
On that video, on the video campaigns, you're talking to them.
I'm
Yeah.
talking to them.
I love
deal.
it. I love it. Good
Check out
stuff.
The
Well,
Art
well
of
done.
Communication. Thank you.
Art of communication.
done.
I love that.
So let's jump into this thing then. So the psychological effects of growing up without a father. Let me read this key point you guys share. Depression, suicide, eating disorders, obesity, and its effects, early sexual activity, addiction, formation, and difficulty building and holding on to loving relationships are all side effects of an absent father. I've got a few points. Let's spin off of that. What are your thoughts about that?
Unfortunately, you have summed up the impact of what happens when the father is absent. And unfortunately for myself, not all of these things, but I have experienced many of these things.
Okay.
And it's painful.
So you said when the father, just tell us for you, because for you've experienced it first, and you just read it or connect or were married to someone with it, it happened in your space.
Yes, unfortunately, tying into Shaundell, your experience, my father was my molester, sexually abusive father. As a child, so for me that experience had a
Did
very...
he do that with the whole family or just you? Did he do that
Unfortunately, with
behavior?
the whole family at different times in different ways. So he's a repeat offender. It's a sickness. And so this is the thing about experiencing this, is that throughout the rest of your life, you are trying to overcome and fight that self-loathing, that shame, that guilt. And you mentioned about relationships. It heavily impacts your relationships because how do you trust anybody?
I knew that was coming.
Yeah.
But think about it.
Really mess with your trust because your foundation
Yes.
was from a place where that's where We're supposed to be loved and cared for and nurtured, and there's a mutual trust.
That's your protector.
Right?
That's your protector.
But you've been violated by that? Okay, the rest of the world must definitely be against you.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest hurdles that you try to overcome, and I will be totally vulnerable. I'm very aware of it, that it impacts my relationships.
I was going to say, you say impacts. I'll bet you it has sabotaged some of your relationships.
Oh, yes.
I didn't want to go there, but unfortunately that word is actually more
Not on purpose.
I self-sabotage relationships because it's almost this psychological thing that happens where before you screw me,
I'm going to get out.
I'm going to get out, or I'm going to put up this blockade where you can't get in and abuse me in any capacity.
And you know what's interesting? So you see it from that side, right? See, and they know my dad is my rock, my hero, my dude, right? He and you know, me and him had such a tight relationship. Everything I get, everything I feel, I can't imagine him violating that trust. I can't imagine him taking away that.
And you say that to say what?
Because I think when he's saying that part of the relationship, that's the opposite. That's the direct opposite of why I do what I do with Arlene and with my kids and my grandkids. I go the other way. I'm trying, like he's saying, I put up a wall. I'm actually opening up, you know. And
you keep the wall down.
I keep the wall down, right?
Wide open.
Yeah, I can't imagine sitting in that place where it's like my father, like me and my dad. There's no, you know what I'm saying?
Well, all really the values that you've experienced. You said, I love the metaphor. Your father is your rock.
Yeah.
That's what a healthy father is supposed to bring to the table. Now, what my father did is extreme, but just tying back into the theme. Yeah. Even just the fact that a father is absent, there now is no rock.
Yes.
That's what it comes down to.
That's a fact.
Here's the part that I'm challenged with, that I get on one level, but I think you get on a much deeper level. Because that has happened to you, it's unfortunate that it impacts your ability to stay connected in loving relationships.
Yeah.
Well, you would think that a loving relationship will come along and make you, oh, good, here it is. But because of the psychological damage, you know what I mean? Unless you kind of can figure out a way to work that out, work through that, and realize, and almost maybe, and this could be wrong, you correct me, almost maybe get it worked out and say, okay, I'm going to compartmentalize it, put it in a box. Yeah. I'm going to put it in that box and put a lock on that box because that does not serve me to live from that space.
But logically, it's easy to say that.
I know, but not
right.
You are in the trenches of life and you're dealing with all these basic human emotions.
Right.
Some of them are beyond logic. They are just spontaneous and you're not even aware of it. So for me, the journey the last 10 years, because I became aware of it, I kind of looked back at my relationships and thought like, wow, what's the common factor here?
Right.
Well, Vital, it's you.
Right.
It's a horrible awakening, but I was the common thread. And then that's when the work begins and things have improved considerably. Yeah. But you've got to, as an individual, for those of you out there who have experienced an absentee father, you are going to have to look into yourself and get rid of the denial, get rid of the shame, and just look in the mirror and be like, okay, there's an issue here that you've got to fix.
Right.
And from that awareness, now you have to start digging deep and start taking those layers away and work at what do I need to do. You can't get rid of the scars. Mm-hmm. The trauma is always there.
Right.
But you've got to find ways, okay, how do I live with these?
Right.
Well, you make a good point, too. That's a really huge point. And also, when you talk about an absentee father, that doesn't always mean that he was never in your life because you never met him, he passed away, or he left home, or he left the family, whatever. He may be right there in the home and still be absent.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is even harder.
Yeah.
Because he's right there, but he's not present. He's not connected. He doesn't, whatever's going on in that dynamic. Mm-hmm. So that's really good. Let me read the next point. Let's spin off of that. The next point says, growing up without a father permanently alters the structure of the brain, which you just teased on, and produce children who are more aggressive and angry. Scientists have warned us of this.
Yeah. Well, and then, going back again, Jess, I think we said this a million times, and I think this is one of the biggest challenges in the African-American community. Because when they keep talking about violent offenders in prison, and they're saying 60% of the black men are going to prison, right? The issue is this: if a third of the U.S. households are fatherless, right, but it goes to 80% in the African American community in the U.S.
What effect does that have on
What effect does that have on these violent crimes, on these psychological impacts, on these referrals in school. What effect does that have? So you have to get to the root of the problem. Yeah. So if you have a lot of these being fatherless households,
and so when
that's a big piece.
When you say we have to get to the root of the problem, and that being fatherless households,
yes.
What do we do when we get to it? Do what? Now what?
Well, there are several steps, and it's one of these maze answers. Like, where do you begin this fixing journey?
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, it comes down to the individual, because as individuals, no matter how tough life is,
on a sliding scale, it's not always going to be a card. You're not going to put a cookie cutter plug in.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
I'm not a father, so it's easy for me to say, but I can only imagine, going back to your father being the rock, it starts with personal accountability.
Yes.
I love what you said. And then even that awareness, personal accountability is part of that first awareness.
Big time,
right?
Big time.
So if you are a father and you've gone through hell and you are a part of that statistic that is destined to end up in jail, by default that you are a father, you've got to do whatever it takes. I've got to shift my level of responsibility, my level of commitment to my kid, my daughter, my son. And that now has to be my priority in life.
Yes.
That's where it starts, individual accountability. Because it's easy to play I've done it to myself, or you play the victim. Yeah, but because of my childhood, I can't help doing this. That is a part of the equation.
You played the victim not on purpose, probably almost out of default.
That's exactly it.
You know what I mean?
To shift that default, you've got to acknowledge, I am a part of the solution.
Yeah.
Well, like Shaundell said, let's get to the root of the problem.
But I'm going to tell you where the challenge is. I'm going to go back to that challenge again.
For those that fall under this.
That fall under this. So now, what is the biggest challenge for young people? They want peer pressure, right?
Yeah.
So again, like I told my son, if only 2 of you in a room of 10 are actually experiencing good fathers, and the other 8 have these stories of abandonment and all of that, what happens to those other 2? Or at least one of them.
Right.
They start wanting to fit in. So they don't want
People do want to fit in.
They do not want to say, "Oh, I got a great father." And I because I asked this question of my son one time. He said, "Well, Dad, I don't really want to be that way. I don't want to be." I couldn't figure out why.
When he says, "I don't want to be that way,"
he doesn't want to be away from all of his friends.
Right.
He doesn't want to be different. Right? Because here it is. Remember, Jess, I did it different. I was a teenage father. I took care of my kids.
Right.
I was a single father. I took care of my kids. He does not want to be that I don't want to be like you, Dad.
Right.
Because that's a lonely space. Right? It's a very lonely space. So to break that cycle is not just the ones that the eight that are out there that, haven't had that experience, but that one individual who doesn't want to be alone and out of that space. So you have to have this paradigm shift of major.
I love your point about being accepted in that whole fitting in thing.
Yeah.
I think that's really key.
Yeah.
Think about this. And another thing you said, is on the psychological side of things, what I've read in terms of psychology is people say this. The best psychologists say this. We are often in one of 4 of these different dispositions. Shaundell named one of them. I am not my father.
Right.
Yeah.
That's your son.
Yep.
Or I am my father.
Yeah.
Or I am not my mother.
Yeah.
Or I am my mother.
Yeah.
We fall in one of those distinctions. We don't even a lot of times realize we've elected that.
Yeah.
And if that's true, what are we leaving on the table by making these hard dispositions of I'm my father? I mean, doing everything you can to be like your father.
Yep.
Or doing everything to be not like your father.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
Don't you think that those psychological choices can impact the quality of our lives and we don't even know it?
Yeah.
But that's exactly it. They are choices. They're really tough choices, but they are choices. Now, to go back to the question of how do we fix that? So as a child growing up in this horrible environment, there were a couple of factors that saved me or helped me. I'm not going to say save me, but help me.
Yes.
And this is where the community can really step in.
Ooh, I love this.
So I had 1 or 2 role models, teachers at school.
Where were those? Where were you at when you had these role models?
So this is now, I was raised very Catholic in a Catholic school.
Okay.
So you live I grew up in a home as well. To add to the fact that my father was
Another
sexually abusive, I grew up in a home like an orphanage.
Mm-hmm.
Now my saving grace was I'm no longer a practicing Catholic, but the structure of Catholicism. So whatever that, if you believe in God and leverage your community, your church.
Right.
Leverage the groups that bring you a sense of belonging, a sense of security.
Right.
But the key factor is if you are in a position where you know a child who has suffered, experienced neglect from an absent father, you can save that kid's life by becoming a role model or a mentor.
I agree.
Those people,
Partnership, create a
yes.
partnership.
Yes.
Nice.
Those
they
people,
can latch on to that.
yes.
Ooh, you gave me chills.
It doesn't replace the father, but boy, is it a good substitute.
It is.
Oh my goodness!
Yes.
I agree.
Oh my goodness! You just gave me so many chills. Well, that was so extremely well said.
Yeah, that was great.
I believe that we are all. You've heard it said that it takes a village to raise a child.
Yeah.
Yes.
I believe that it takes a global village to
Yeah.
raise a child these days. It can go beyond the boundaries and the guidelines of where you live.
Yeah.
I was absolutely extremely fortunate to fall into the condition of what you said. I grew up my mother and father. I grew up in the home.
Yeah.
Although they battled a great deal when I was a kid, they fought a lot. That's what I remember a lot about their relationship. I remember more about their fighting than I do about their loving one another. I'm not saying they didn't love one another. I'm just saying they didn't just demonstrate it on my watch.
Right.
But I knew that my home wasn't the only place for me to learn. So I was influenced by the Del Porto family. I was influenced by the Blunt family. I was influenced by the Essenprice. I was influenced by the Ludwigs. Donna Ludwig, my 8th grade art teacher, if it wasn't for her, I never would have gone to the University of Las Vegas because she allowed me to walk through the desert, several miles through the desert every day, anytime I wanted to, and she would critique my artwork. She never turned me away, not once. She never said, well, you know I got dinner on the stove. No, she always looked at my stuff and, well, whatever. So that was an influence. So Sandy Essenprice, she's my 4th grade teacher. And I grew up in a predominantly white environment. And years later, about 35 years later, I asked her, why did you told me you always knew I was going to be somebody? I go, how could you know that about a 4th grader?
Right.
She says, because you're the only kid I've ever experienced before you and after you that would stay after school after getting a 98 on the test to learn what 2 questions you missed and how. She said, that told me, because most people that get A's, they're done.
Yeah.
Right? But that kind of influence is how I grew up with that.
And I can tell you, even as you have both parents.
Yes.
And I had my father and my mother. And my mother was a devout Christian, still is. Evangelist Newsome. You want to see her shouting? Look on YouTube. Man, she went viral one time. Everybody called me up. I see your mother. I'm like, where? She's not even on social media. But I tell you, the one thing is that even with both parents, you need those people, right? And I had Michael Collins. That was the person who actually showed me how to run a business at 14 years old. So he helped me understand like things that no other kid was thinking about. I think most kids wanted to do basketball, like growing up, and hip hop was new, and so there was rap music and break dancing, all that in New York in the early 80s.
Sure, of course.
I was enamored by business. I was blown away by marketing, communication. Yeah. I went to high school of communication arts. Early on. So that was
what attracted to you that?
You know, I think it was the psychology of it all. And
you were interested in the psychology of it. You probably didn't call it that. It was just a draw for you.
Yeah, it was the draw because David Ogilvy, who wrote the book on advertising, that his book was fairly new. It was in the 70s, but he was the guy who everybody takes a lot of credit for branding and marketing and communication today. He was the guy from the British who changed the way we did advertising, brought it to an emotion. Hey, I love my Rolls Royce. I feel silky and smooth with my Dove soap. He was the one that actually revolutionized that because most of the time people were selling products.
Right, that book.
They were not marketing them. Yeah,
that book influenced.
That book influenced.
Let's do a little bit of a diversion. Let's do a little bit of diversion for the audience. We'll get back on point on this, but you're talking about books being something that opens up something in you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. One book called Action Strategies for Personal Achievement by Brian Tracy changed my whole world completely.
Mm-hmm.
After a devastating loss in corporate America, I decided I was going to discover my purpose. I had no clue on how to do that. I picked up this book, and the first in the first chapter, he said that if you will read an hour a day in your field of study, you can become an expert in that field. I'm thinking, I didn't know I could do something different.
Yeah.
He says, if you do not know what your best gifts and talents are, ask 10 to 15 people that know you well, what are your best gifts and talents?
Yeah.
They know even if you don't.
Right.
Thinking, I did those two things, and that's what helped me embark upon a professional speaking and life coaching, executive coaching career path that I never even know I had the skills for.
Right.
Yeah.
Let alone to go and get the training and all that. But the books, they say, the books, you will be the same person you are 10 years from today, except for the books that you read, the people that you meet,
Yes.
and what you do about your life experiences.
Yeah.
So let's talk about books really quickly. So we've got several authors here sitting at the table.
Cool.
Real quickly, the book that you've authored, the 12 Steps.
12 Steps.
Tell us real quickly
So,
about
so that comes off of like what I was just talking about, like on advertising with David Ogilvy.
Sure.
My experience with Station Casinos to date has the best loyalty program, bar none. I mean, just took a small family-owned casino business and just morphed into this, mega casino operation. And they did it all through relationships. So my not theory but reality is that people want to have real relationships. I rewrote the word.
Real
relationships.
Right.
They want to have relationships with product services.
You would know the reword stuff, just so
all the time. I do it all day.
You use
Yeah.
your MSU program.
That's right.
That's your degree, MSU, making stuff up.
Yeah, all the
There's
time.
another word for the S
Yeah.
word. We're going to use,
No.
you use an MSU.
Hey, you
making
know what?
stuff up.
I'll use the other word. I'm not Catholic, so I don't actually have to sit back and do a confessional.
But we got a cross in the kitchen. So
That's
be
right.
careful now.
That's right. So I tell you the
He will
biggest.
smite you down. Be
That's
careful.
right. That's right. I know the whole thing. Yeah, and he would have smite me down a long time ago, brother. Excuse me. But the big piece is that the relationship that people have with products and services and brands is an emotion. So that's what the 12 Steps of Marketing, it talks about. First, you have to understand who you are as a product, service, or brand. Then you have to make sure that your unique abilities and your unique talents fit a problem and solves a problem for a group of people who then become loyal customers.
Very nice.
Who I call loyal brand champions.
Very nice. I like it. So
I think I need to read your book.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, very good.
Why not?
Funny you said it because it's.
I can find it on Amazon?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
And Vital's written. Was it 4 books or more?
4. Shaundell, not to brag, I wrote 4 books.
Okay.
Oh no, I'm good with it. I raised 4 kids.
Touche.
Touche.
So Vital's sitting with Flying Without a Net.
Yes.
First off, Flying Without a Net 2.0. Well, first off, Flying
Yes.
Without a Net, then Flying Without a Net 2.0.
Yeah.
Tell me the difference between the two. Why did you write these books?
So this ties into this topic that we're talking about
nice.
right here. So Flying Without a Net is about the journey of overcoming the abuse, the self-hate, the self-loathing, the doubt.
Wow.
That's good.
Flying Without a Net. And the metaphor is, it ties into my experience with Cirque du Soleil as an acrobat. So the metaphor is, in life you take risks.
Wow.
Right.
You jump and pursue your dream even if you don't have wings. And you've got to believe that your wings are going to emerge before you hit the ground.
Wow.
So there's an element of it's self-belief. Regardless of all
Self-trust,
the self-trust, all those
yeah.
things. That's what that's about. And
Wow.
of course, like I said, you get some insight into the Cirque du Soleil process. The 2.0 is simply the sequel.
Okay, fair enough. Got it.
Okay, so that gets more into Vital the adult. Now, how do you translate those experiences to become successful as a human being?
Because it doesn't
as an
go away.
entrepreneur?
That's what people need to understand. It doesn't go away.
You just learn to navigate it and actually leverage it.
Right.
Nice.
There you go.
Nice. And
Yeah.
innovation
I like
mindset.
that.
So now
Innovation
came the
mindset.
shift. I became a corporate keynote speaker, and I wanted to take my Cirque du Soleil experience in terms of what is that mindset that drives excellence, that drives extraordinary performance, that drives innovation, adapting to different markets. It's a business book. It's about culture. Even though it's a business book, some of the actionable tools in there are very relevant to personal life, because
I like it.
in life we have to continually adapt.
Yes.
Nice.
That's
I love
the
it.
foundation
Very
of that.
nice.
Innovation mindset.
Very good. 3 simple steps.
Three
Healthy,
simple-
wealthy, and happy living.
Yes, that's the most recent book. It's a very sort of innocent, childlike story. You can read it in 20 minutes. It's just
Okay.
these 3 basic principles that will hopefully empower you and inspire you to live a happier, wealthier.
That's good stuff,
Very
man.
nice.
That's good stuff.
Very nice. Well,
Hey.
you know, this is really good because the first time, and we'll get back on point because we're going to run out of time, but I definitely want to get back on our title for today. When I first sat down to write a book, I did it for all the wrong reasons. I did it. I'll just name one of them. Is because as a speaker and as a coach, I'm supposed to have a book. I sat down. I started to write that book. I believe it was 30 pages, and the book was done. but it wasn't a book.
Right.
Because I did it for the wrong reasons. When I sat down to write How You Leave Them Feeling, it was very, very different. Actually, it wrote itself. It came from an inspiration from being in the middle of a coaching session with a client, and that inspiration led me to believe that someone this intelligent who's lost on this concept of how you leave people feeling, more people must be lost on that same concept.
Right.
So I felt the desire to get that so people could get to this intelligence and change, make a shift. So I really believe that when you have written your books for the right reasons, as has Shaundell, now you've got something tangible and credible that people can actually use. So,
Absolutely.
So we did a sidebar on this. Let me bring it back in then. So point number 3. Children brought up only by a single mother have a higher risk of developing deviant behaviors, including drug abuse. Let's weigh in on that.
Unfortunately, I have to agree. Statistics also will back that up. Now, again, going back to the individual choices, and this is something from my personal experience. You've been raised, you're a single mother, your kids are going to suffer. Now, this is where personal accountability comes into it. You've got this trauma that you've experienced. Now, you've got 2 choices. You can't deny the trauma. The 2 choices are, that trauma is going to guide me down a darker path. Like you said, deviant behavior.
Yes.
I was tempted by drugs. I was tempted by all these side short-term fixes to my pain.
Right.
That's what it is.
Now, you can channel that pain into purpose.
Ooh, I like that.
Channel your pain into purpose. So
Nice.
a part of me, I'm going to be a bit blunt, I am pissed off at the world. A part of me is that I'm pissed off, like, why me? You can play that card.
Right. Right.
But however, you can channel that and say, you know what, I am pissed off at the world and I've been categorized as a statistic and a nobody. And you know what? I'm going to prove you all wrong.
Yeah.
And I channel that anger and that pain into becoming successful, good at something. And along that journey, I can also say, and while I'm at it, I'm going to help others.
Yeah.
You said that's what you actually did.
A part of it was that there was an element of anger that I'm going to prove you all wrong and I am somebody and I'm going to defy the odds.
Yep.
And now that I've actually attained that level of I've defied the odds, now comes responsibility.
Yep.
Pay it forward. You've got to share your learnings and your experiences. It's what you have to do.
Yep.
If you are successful, you've got to pass it on.
I love what you shared, but in the journeyman levels of him evolving through this, meaning Vital, through this, I like his approach.
Yeah.
But he is not living that today. I believe that you've evolved.
I have.
Yeah.
Because now you're not doing it to prove them wrong.
No.
Now you're doing it to prove for yourself, for you, that you have the ability to continue to rise.
Yeah.
Yes.
To accept.
Right?
Yeah.
So them may have been the catalyst, but you switched over to, because I think if you had stuck with proving them wrong, you'd be with a chip on your shoulder.
Yeah.
Which I don't have.
But you don't have.
Yeah,
Which
no.
means somewhere I like that is a great entry into how you move through this.
Yeah.
Lisa?
I have a question for Marie Tomeo. I hear courage in this. How do we encourage kids to feel comfortable enough to share their pain surrounding this topic? And where do they go to get and receive real help understanding how to overcome such a sensitive subject?
Let's answer the first question. So the first question is, how do we encourage kids to share? Is that it?
Share their pain surrounding this topic.
My first vote, and then I want the two of you to weigh in, is those kids must gravitate to a trusted advisor.
Yes. I agree.
It doesn't have to be an official like a psychologist. I mean,
Yeah.
great if that is, but maybe
Yeah.
they don't have that in the bandwidth. But they have got to gravitate to a trusted advisor.
Absolutely.
And tell the whole truth with no vulnerability.
Yes.
Know that that secret or that situation is between the two of you at the moment.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
Well,
Well,
I
first of
think
all, Marie, thank you for that question. That's a very
That's a
relevant
really good
question.
great
I'm
question.
gonna let
No,
you
go ahead.
So there are a couple of things to do. You hit it. What you said is perfect. We as adults have got to provide an environment where they can feel trusted to share.
Yes.
But I'm going to go beyond just the individual. As a society, as a collective, this is what happens with kids who are abused and traumatized. They live in shame, so they've experienced the burden of being victimized. And then what happens is society judges them. And so how
Big
can you
time.
have the courage to go and say, I was molested, I was abused? Because people are going to condemn you, and now you feel even more alienated. So as individuals, your responsibility is to stop judging and giving them a double sentence.
Yes.
I agree, but you also said we need to create a safe place for them. Guess what? Sometimes we don't know they're going through it, and quite frankly, I don't think we realize we need to create that safe place. What happens if that safe place is not created for them to answer Maria's
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
I think the answer, I like your point, but the
Yeah.
answer is this.
Yeah.
The child has got to find the courage to develop that trust.
And where does that courage
advisor
come from, right?
relationship.
So, yeah, and the biggest thing is, remember, I showed the video at Mindset of Success, our
Yes.
deepest fear,
Right.
right?
Right.
And sometimes as young people, especially when something like molestation has happened, we feel somewhat inferior. We're not
100%.
feeling
And
we're not feeling powerful.
Also, we feel that it's
Yeah.
our fault.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
think
Yes.
we
Yeah.
did something.
Yes.
Yeah.
We must have done something.
There's
to make
something that
them do this
happened,
to me.
right.
But
Yeah.
really, they're just in the space. They didn't do it.
But I
Right?
think when young people, I'd encourage young people, one, allow yourself to be powerful. Make yourself a superhero. Make yourself that person where you step out of that space and you say, you know what, my deepest fear is that I'm powerful beyond measure. I am powerful.
How do they do that, Shaundell?
You know-
How do they do that, Shaundell, when they're broken,
Yeah,
abused, violated,
Yeah.
misunderstood, confused,
Yeah.
worried, scared? How do they make
it
themselves powerful?
starts with what you were talking about. It starts with finding that trusted advisor that allows you to release all those emotions. Because his anger turned him into a superhero.
Right.
All of a sudden, it's like, I'm pissed off at everybody. I'm gonna defeat y'all.
Right.
I'm gonna crush your spirit
Right.
because you tried to crush mine.
So you're
So
saying,
now you're actually pulling that power
right. So you're challenging those listening to help those young folks
to
connect,
access their power.
and they need to learn how to do that.
Yes.
They probably don't know
Yes.
how to do that.
Because what's
You
happening?
really tell
Yes,
me
I totally agree. But
Yeah.
to really get to the focal point of what Marie was asking there, and this is maybe something that might help because she was, I think, coming from the perspective as that wounded child. What do? It's easy as adults because we've overcome
Yeah.
it, we've learned,
Right.
we've grown to
Yeah.
look back and say, well, you've got to believe and you've got to do these things.
Yeah.
But when you are that vulnerable kid
Right.
who doesn't trust the world, who feels insecure, what do? These are some of the things I leverage. This is romantic. If you can imagine these kids, you've got to try and imagine what would a better future look like. That's where it's. I'm putting the onus on the individual as the kid. You're hurt, you're wounded, you feel insecure. Try to imagine what it would look like to live that life, that perfect life,
Right.
and you hold on to that dream
Right.
because it's the element of hope. There is always hope.
Yeah.
Very quickly, there's an experiment they did with rats. They put rats in a water container and they were going to drown. And then some of the rats, they took them out of the water just as they were drowning. When they put them back in the water, those rats survived twice as long because of the element of hope.
Yeah.
So
Right.
any young adults out there listening, there is hope.
Right.
You've got to believe that there is hope.
Yeah.
Leverage that. Dig deep and tell yourself, tomorrow can and will be better.
Yeah.
It can.
And they don't have to move from the abuse
Yeah.
and the psychological effects of what's happening to this quick place of power. They can move to the desire to build a relationship
Yeah.
that will
Relationships.
offer
Yep.
you the opportunity
Yep.
to, at some point, tell the story. They don't have to
Yeah.
go immediately tell the story
Yeah.
because that's going to be too uncomfortable. They have to build relationship,
Yeah.
real relationship,
Yeah.
to be able to have that comfortable in that space enough to share that. They're
Yeah.
not going to be able to share right away the incident.
Right.
But I think they can get there
Yeah.
after knowing this is a safe place to tell the truth.
And when I
Right.
got, it took me till I was 23 years old, from 12 to 23 when I went to counseling and therapy in the military. And one of the things that I had to come to grips with is, one, like you said, not blaming myself, but also you get to the point where you're looking at that person and saying, I wonder if somebody did that to them.
Right.
That brought them to that place
Right.
where because hurt people hurt people.
Yes.
Yeah. People that are hurting hurt others.
Yeah, they keep going, and then there's this cycle that happens from generation to generation. So it took me from there to there, not feeling sorry, but also having a justification somewhat saying, oh, well, maybe that was taught to that person and they thought that was the right thing to do. And it's a cycle.
Or whether they thought it was the right thing to do or not, they did it as a sequence because it happened to them and it happened before
Exactly.
them. Before them.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
So you start to
Handed down.
Yeah, it's a hand me down.
It is.
And they're not even understanding, like he said, that was a sickness for his father.
Right.
That's a sickness for this young man, And so it's one of those things that we have to come to grips with as we start going through this process.
I like it. So what was Marie's second part of that question? We answered the first part. I think that's pretty good substance for the first part of that.
Where do they go to receive real help in understanding how to overcome such a sensitive subject?
Okay, so we answered it all in one then, right?
Well, just to quickly add to that, because I actually know Marie very well. So this is some options for some youth out there. It just happens that Marie has a youth program called Youth Leadership Authority. So as kids or as parents struggling with kids who are in trouble or who are at risk, there are a lot of organizations out there. It can be the church. It can be a youth group. Reach out to the community because there are programs out there that are designed to help kids. Youth Leadership Authority being one of them. So that's one resource that kids can sort of latch onto. There's help out there. There are people out there who want to help.
And you know, one of the things we've been doing as a business community in the chamber is going out to some of these youth organizations, because sometimes people don't realize, they see us in our nice shiny suits and they see us doing successful things in business, but they don't realize that we've been through what they've been through.
Well said.
So also getting them to talk to some of those successful business owners that can help them see that I went through this. I know where you come from. And that was another thing that helped me in the neighborhood, is having successful people come in and show their vulnerability.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well said. So with that point, let's slide into this last point. Fatherless daughter syndrome is a disorder of the emotional system that leads to repeated dysfunctional relationship decisions, especially in the areas of trust and self-worth. It can be a lifelong syndrome if the symptoms go unrecognized and acknowledged. Just brief. We have about 5 minutes left. What are your brief thoughts on that? The fatherless daughter
I think the relationship between a father and daughter is crucial, because that should be the example of what that young lady who she should be aspiring to be with, who she can measure up to, if you will. And if you look at how, let's use Tiara for example, she keeps saying, you know, first of all, my name's Shaundell. I think she purposely went and found Sean.
Right.
Try to get somebody like a dad. No, I'm just kidding. You know, I'm Sean Odell. He's Irish, so you know, love that. Huh? But really, there's a lot of similarities between me and her husband, and there's a lot of you know, we're both very frugal, if you will. And we're, you know, but we have things that we don't mess around with when it comes to dollars. So she sees that we're both loving fathers, loving husbands, adventurous in our own ways. You know, he loves the outdoors and crazy stuff. I take more risk in other areas. There's a lot of similarities. Air Force, all that.
Let me share another point that I uncovered in my research on this, because I didn't have a lot of intelligence, and so I wanted to do some work. Another interesting thing to note is that daddy issues are not just reserved for women with absent fathers. Many women whose father was very much present in their lives also suffer from daddy issues. The effects of a good or bad father are on a girl, basically. So, your thoughts when you hear that?
Well, again, I'm going to put the responsibility on the fathers here. And I recently read this quote that kind of blew my mind, and it was something to the essence of this. If your daughter is dating a man like you, and it doesn't make you happy, then you are the problem.
Right.
That's a great quote.
Something on that essence. So as fathers, it's your responsibility. You talked about example. Be the example to your daughter how you would want a man to treat your daughter.
Good.
Treat your wife, your girlfriend, your significant other with the due respect that they deserve.
Right.
And that creates a ripple effect, because if the father is absent and not a father in the way that is necessary, unfortunately, young girls are heavily traumatized.
Wow, that's big. I'm going to do a little quick laser session. We didn't talk about this before. I want you to respond with just one word. I'll say a bullet point, you respond one word only. Okay? Here it comes. You have issues implementing boundaries. One word. These are like fatherless daughters. You have issues implementing boundaries.
Confused.
Change.
Number 2, you have low self-esteem. Vital?
Work.
You have low self-esteem. Shaundell?
Oh, wow.
That's it. That was 2 words, but that's it. That's powerful enough. Don't say anymore. That's good. Point number 3. You cannot trust your partners. Vital? One word.
Wow.
Okay? Shaundell, you cannot trust your partners.
God.
Okay? Understanding you feel in trusting someone. The fear you feel in trusting someone. Shaundell, one word.
Faith.
Okay? One word.
Courage.
Okay? Number 4, you tend to date older men. One word. Shaundell.
Respect.
Okay?
Who's your daddy?
That's 3 words, but I like it.
Who's your daddy?
Give it to me.
That was a good one.
That was a good one.
That's a great one.
They're not following the rules, listen. But I didn't expect for them to. But that's okay. I love them. Okay, point number 5. You're emotionally unavailable. Shaundell.
Lonely.
Vital.
Isolated.
I like it. Point number 6. You prefer sexual relationships to emotional ones. Vital.
Superficial.
Wow. New question for you, Shaundell. 7. You're afraid of abandonment.
Scared.
Nice. New one for you, Vital. You constantly need reassurance.
Insecure.
I like it. New one for you, Shaundell. You tend to be jealous.
Insecure.
Very good. Vital. You seek emotionally unavailable men.
Directionless.
Ooh, nice. Shaundell. You push men away.
Bold.
Okay. Lisa. You become easily attached.
You become easily attached. Groveling.
Just a couple more. Vital. You seek out fairy tales.
Romantic.
Okay. Shaundell. You are a people pleaser.
Caring.
Nice. Vital. You love attention from men, even if they aren't your partner.
Diva.
Wow. So what you guys just did really
Good stuff.
in a speed fashion, but those are a lot of the symptoms and challenges as research that hit fatherless daughters and what happens. And so you think about that. That was a load. And every word that you guys use, inclusive of what Lisa did to express, said a lot about that condition.
Right.
Imagine someone battling a whole slew of these conditions.
Yeah.
It's hard for them to never be happy in their lives, right?
Oh, yeah.
So what's a call to action? Let's start with Shaundell. Shaundell, what's a good call to action for people listening to this podcast, or whether they're watching it or listening to it? What's a good call to action regarding psychological effects of growing up without a
Well, I think I'm going to say this. I'm going to put a responsibility on the community, and I've said this before. I think that the community has to stop normalizing single parenting. I think they have to stop normalizing it. They have to say, and they have to stop normalizing, especially single motherhood, because at one point we were starting to give mothers Christmas cards on Father's Day. Instead of making those fathers accountable, we're giving them kind of an out, in my opinion. We're saying, well, we got these great mothers around, so no worries, but then we still have these tragic situations that happen.
Let me respond to you like this. I gave you guys one word. I'm giving you 5. Gone with your bad self. That's 5 words. Good answer.
Go on with your back.
Go on with your
Now
bad
you ought to take that and give that to your mama because you sounded black there.
Yes, you did.
Go on with your bad.
That's right.
You sound
Go
more
on.
black than that.
Go on. Go on, Jesse.
I'll black you, woman.
So you supposed to go on, Jesse?
I'll show you black. Vital, we have just less than
My
a minute
call
left.
to action
Close
is-
with a call to action. For
My
our
call to
audience.
action is very simple. It's one word: empathy. If
Ooh.
we can have all that little bit more empathy and relate to these people that we're talking about, they now feel less alienated.
Yes.
They can now, as a result of feeling less alienated, they can now start sharing, and through the sharing comes the healing.
Yes.
Be more empathetic.
Yes. I
Go
love
with
it.
your bad.
Yes,
All
thank
right.
you very much, my brother.
Go on. That's right.
Okay, look. So I want to close with this. Where can people find you, Shaundell? People interested in yours.
Well, that-
Now
That's
you're looking at.
I know we
Vital,
all look
calling
alike.
me Sean.
I know we all look alike to you.
Oh, he went there. He went
You know what I'm
there.
saying? I get it.
Y'all the same to me.
That's right. I just don't have the accent and
Talk
all.
to the hand. Whatever. Looking at one and calling the other. Yeah,
Literally my full name, vitalgermaine.com, and in terms of social media, at vitalgermaine across the board. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube.
Okay, Vital, where can they find you? I mean.
All right, Lisa.
Shaundell.
We can, you can find me on all those
Okay.
different social media outlets. Shaundell Newsome and some new marketing. I'm there all the time too.
Fair enough. I like it. They can find us on justtalk.com and YouTube and all those other social media marketplaces. Lisa Ferrell does a great job of keeping us up to speed.
Oh, she does.
And we'd like to say this was an extraordinary program today. One word. What do you like best about this program? One word.
Vital.
Now I'm talking to Shaundell.
Vital.
Okay, Vital.
Word of the day, real relationships.
Relationships.
That's
At
what
the
I'm
end of the
talking about.
day, we know that our best lives always start and end with one thing, and it's all about
How you leave them feeling. Yeah. All right. Awesome job.